Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Screwjob podcast. Today, there will be no wrestling discussed. This is going to be a discussion about something that's very important in America and very important to me, and very important to a lot of folks, especially during times like this with the coronavirus and social injustice. And yeah, let's just dive right into it. I'm gonna make this statement now, and I want it to be known true. In case you've never seen the live shows, I'm white, but I'm going to tell you something. Black Lives Matter. I'll say it one more time. Black Lives Matter. This is not a country that was, founded equally, despite what people would want to tell you. America is a country built on the backs of slaves. It's simple as that. Um, and America is one of the few countries to exclusively make slavery based off the color of another person's skin, which is disgusting. It makes me just sick thinking about it. And that's why I chose to study history as a major in college, to try and learn more about why we as a society thought this was okay, and how we could use the past to try to better our futures. And clearly, we haven't been doing that in the past 200 years. Um, so where to start? Yeah, where to start, really? Let's just start with George Floyd. Um, his murder sparked something in this country that I haven't seen in years. Not just like protests and riots. And you know what? We'll cover that in a minute too. But his death and how America responded to it has been nothing short of amazing. Uh, we've never seen a more I don't know, trying to think of a word. Like this is hard. I'm sorry. More unifying event surrounding the death of George Floyd. Like his murder. It was a murder. He couldn't breathe. It was a murder. It's police brutality and it's homicide. Um, Look, his death is something that should never have happened, obviously, and it results from years and years and years and years of police backed backed policies and political policies that negatively affect African American communities, target African American communities, and do not train officers well enough to deal with African Americans and suspects, sorry, or yeah, in this case it would be a suspect technically. Technically speaking, you could call anyone who is under police investigation a suspect, or having a altercation with the police a suspect. I had an altercation with the police last night. I got caught speeding, and I had an altercation with the officer last night. And you know what? It probably would have went worse for me if I was an African American, because that is what this country is all about: racism. Racism in America are like peanut butter and jelly. You don't get one without the other. Or they're just smushed together. You know what? Sometimes you just want to have the peanut butter. Sometimes you just want America. But you know what? Sometimes jelly has just got to be part of everything. Um, I lost my analogy, but George Floyd's death and the outcry of the citizens of the United States has been incredible. And you know what? I was afraid to make a statement originally because I didn't want any backlash. But then I'm like thinking, you know what? I have a small channel. I don't care what happens. I'm doing this for fun anyway. I like this show. I'm prepping to do a big episode anyway in the near future. So that's why I've been buying up hundreds of dollars of merchandise. Not because I have a problem, but because I want to make content that's fun and I want to have fun. I don't care how many people see it. I'm gonna rewatch it every year probably and watch myself make a bad decision. Um, that's not what this is about. This is about racism in America and how Black Lives Matter. So let's talk about the protests. So they are peaceful protests, and a small minority have turned them into riots. That's not appropriate. It defeats the purpose and it hurts the message that the Black Lives Matter is trying to um, convey. And it's something that we as a society should try to avoid the rioting. And yes, there is a precedent. The beating of Rodney King, when those officers were found not guilty, there were riots in the city of Los Angeles, and that makes sense. It was clearly police brutality, and it could have been a homicide. And I don't know how they would have reacted then if it was a homicide and it was innocent. No, I mean, like, that would have been insane. And that was only what, 28 years ago, right? Yeah, that's math, I think. Yeah, 28 years ago. And look how far we have come. We have not gone very far. That's the thing I'm saying right now. You could draw a line in the sand for Rodney King and then, like, make a tick mark every time we made progress as a society, and you wouldn't see very many other lines leading up to George Floyd's death, which is unfortunate. And let's start talking about lynch culture in America and how, like, these racist tactics, I guess it would be a word for it, or these, like, traditions, I guess. No, not traditions. That's the wrong word to use. Procedures. These race procedures have, like, been involved in the police for a long time. When you go back to looking at lynch mobs and you learn about how a lot of times officers were involved at the scene, they were taking pictures, they were they were they were participating in the murder of someone, and they didn't get a reprimanded from that. That's something that's kind of, like, built into police culture in a way when you stop and think about it. Because what what's up with Rodney King, right? What happened to those guys? Nothing. They were found innocent. Uh, George Floyd's death, the fact that we actually have, like, a homicide trial is crazy. It's crazy. It's insane how far we have come as a society to know that all it took was the murder of an innocent man in a time where everyone is already losing their damn minds. Um, so yeah, another reason I didn't want to, like, speak out on this is because I worked at a job where I have a lot of customers. I have over 500 customers a day I serve at register, right? And everyone's got an opinion. Not everyone wants to hear mine. I don't want to hear theirs. But there are people who will come in uh, supporting officers, and people who come in not supporting officers. My company's policy is to give uniformed officers free coffee. You know what? I do it because that's policy. If I had my choice, I probably wouldn't do it, to be honest with you, because it is supporting people that have been part of oppressing African Americans throughout their entire time as African Americans. You call African Americans aren't really considered African Americans until the Civil War, when the Emancipation Proclamation. They're still slaves. They're technically told that they're not slaves anymore with that proclamation. However, they hadn't become citizens yet. You have to wait until the 14th Amendment for African Americans to even be recognized as citizens. So, in the past 100 years, 100 plus, 1965, I believe, being I believe, no, it's 66, being the 100th year anniversary, I believe, of the 14th Amendment. Not double checking that. I don't have time. This is not important to the story. The important part is that it's 100 years, and we as a society don't treat African Americans or immigrants and minorities as as you know full citizens. We treat them as second class citizens, which is messed up. It's wrong, and it's not how we should be living as society. And I hope that, like, this message, if it does go anywhere, like, it's reaching someone. Because, like, think about it from whatever perspective you're at. How would you feel if someone of your race, religion, nationality was just murdered and there was no repercussions. And you just have to like accept the fact that that's just part of the country that you live in. That's pretty messed up. It's a pretty messed up society we live in already. And it doesn't help when we have racist officers and policies that still entrench racism, such as voter restriction, for example. Do you know how voter restriction really started? It started because white Southerners in the South, they were Democrats at the time. Fun fact, you can actually switch your perspective, the party perspective, over time. You look into the 1960s, Kennedy was a Democrat, he was very progressive for the time, and he kind of moved that party more into the Democratic Party that we see today, as opposed to the Republican Party. They kind of crossed the lines and swapped. But that's not what this is about. This is about Black Lives Matter. Uh, so what was I saying? Yes, how we have voter restriction in the first place. Well, post Civil War, we have the institution of Jim Crow laws by a bunch of Southern states. Now, basically, these were well, no, it wasn't Jim Crow laws yet. Sorry, but basically, these laws were meaning to try to restrict African Americans from being able to vote through literacy tests, for example. That was a big one. Um, having having a parent or grandparent, you need like two generations to be able to vote, and that person had to be recognized as citizen. So, for example, if your grandpa was a slave and you go to vote and you need your grandfather with a birth certificate or whatever, or some form of citizenship, he won't be able to provide it, so you won't be able to vote. That was something that was happening in the 1800s. It's pretty messed up. Um, so yeah, we have that voter restriction. And then we have lynch mobs forming with the Ku Klux Klan. They come around here. They're not as active. They're more targeting like people in the night, riding around, harassing them, trying to get them to go, more than murdering people. But still, it's a hate group that's founded on hate and thrived with hate. So I don't see why anyone finds it okay that the president is cool with getting support from David Duke, the leader of the Ku Klux Klan, or the former Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan, for example. But that's not what this is about. This is about Black Lives Matter. And I hope that's getting across while I'm talking about this. I'm going to keep saying it because Black Lives Matter. That is what we should be taking away from this. Not all lives matter. You can say that, but you're wrong. Black lives matter because not all lives are threatened by racist policies, racist people, and are entrenched by racist ideologies that have been around since the 1800s. That is not America. That is not all lives. That is not what we stand for. That is not all lives matter. You can say blue lives matter. You know what? You're wrong. Blue lives do matter in a way. However, officers have not been targeted. They have not been dealing with this racism and this targeting by a community before. It just doesn't happen. It's never happened, never will, and it's something that a lot of people need to get over. Okay, so let's clear that air. So I was talking about lynch mobs, right? Yes, I think I was anyway. I don't remember. It's a headache to get through. Um, And honestly, that's what this is. It's more of a headache than anything else that we have to have this conversation in the year 2020. We're in the middle of 2020. We're past the halfway mark, and we're just now really having like this full conversation about how we are still seeing oppression of African American communities and minority groups in America, and how we do not give them proper protections, and the people that we have put in a position of power to protect these people do not use that power to protect these people. It's just an unfortunate thing that we as Americans have to deal with. And yeah, you know what? The coronavirus that's also going on. I'll talk about that a bit. We're fucked. Swearing stick, baby. I don't know when you think it's okay to reopen schools without any like protections for the children or the teachers or the faculty and staff, and you don't have a plan in place, I think it's kind of irresponsible and stupid to open a school. But that's just me. Same can go for my college. Same can go for my college. I'm not going in if it's not safe. I'll take an online class. I don't care. I'll stop going to that school. I'll transfer my degree to an online class, to an online university, for example. Stuff like that. I already put the deposit down. I don't really care about that anymore. Um, but yeah, that's not what this is about. It's about Black Lives Matter, and you know what? It does. It Black lives really do matter, and I believe I was talking about more about I was talking more about segregation, Jim Crow laws, and voting restrictions. We have continued to restrict voters by district by requiring ID. Not everyone has ID, and you know what? It's terrible that these decisions are targeting people, and a lot of districting is built around targeting a group of people. In this case, it's getting your voting demographic, and a lot of the times the African American voting demographic is more split up and like less important in a way. It's not less important, but it's not given as much priority when defining a voter group in a country. You'll see if you look up gerrymandering, find out all about that redistricting. You can learn about how you can basically manipulate your district by population to get the best voting result for you. And it's something that I don't really have time to explain, nor am I the correct person to explain how redistricting works and how it's a process that can in some case cause a large chunk of people's votes to be diminished by a majority of votes determined by how the district was reshaped. I'm not the person to talk about that. And really, I'm not the person to talk about Black Lives Matter, am I? I'm just some white dude who's sitting on his couch who has a shitty wrestling podcast. Excuse me, swearing stick. That was a weak hit. There we go. Um, but it's something that we all need to have a conversation about. Either do it with your children, or do it with your parents, or have a conversation with a friend, or a family, or another family member. It's okay to have differing opinions. You do not have to let your political or religious beliefs separate how you feel about someone as a person. Um, or how you care about them. Like, for example, my father. He and I have never gotten along. I hate his guts to this day, and I hope he hears it. I will still be nice and, I'll even be loving to him every time I see him. I'll give him a hug. I'll tell him I love him because he's my father. There's nothing I can change about that, and he's a Republican. I'm a Democrat. I hate what he thinks. I hate that he believes that Black Lives Matter doesn't really matter. I hate that he believes that, that our political differences, or that, for example, this was something that he was really bothered by, that Barack Obama was the president, and that I found that I liked supporting him, and I was going to vote for a Democratic candidate in 2016. Um, he didn't like that, and he would show me all these Fox News clips about how all these things are plants or whatever, and these conspiracy theorists thought the Boston Marathon bombings were fake. And you know what? I can disagree with a lot of things he says, but and you know what? I can debate with him. I can have an argument with him. And at the end of the day, he can either say, that was a good point, Mike, or he can say whatever, which he usually did. And here's the thing, at the end of the day, I still love him. He's my father. Even though I don't like seeing him and I don't like talking to him, I still love him in a way. And that's because he's family. And that's what we should really be having these conversations with our communities, our families, our friends about why Black Lives Matter is so important and how we as a community need to move towards a more equal and liberated America where we are all actually equal and we are all actually free and we do not have to live in fear and fear persecution and hatred from other groups. That is the America that I want to see in my lifetime, and I'm afraid I will never see it, but I do hope, for example, that my kids or my grandkids get to see it. 'Cause God, what a bleak future we live in if we don't have that. So I guess I'll wrap it up. Nothing I'll ever do will ever like match how passionately I feel about this right now. Other than like some podcast episodes, I guess I'm doing a food taste test. That's gonna be the one that I'm gonna care the most about, other than this one. Um, and the 100th episode, obviously. But if you like this video, you can share it if you feel like it. It's up to you. It's just my opinion. I don't particularly care if you share it or not. Um, like this video if you want to. Share it if you want to. You can subscribe if you want to. It's just gonna be wrestling content. Um, and check out the Facebook, Twitter, and Patreon. I've been Mike. This for the Screwjob podcast. Hashtag Black Lives Matter.